Have you ever walked into a room and just known something was about to change? That's exactly how it felt that morning. I was at my usual spot near the front, pretending to organize case files while really just trying to manage my nerves. The air was thick with whispers. It was clear this wasn't just another routine case. The prosecutor stood up, dead serious, and announced, "This man claimed he could kill at 800 yards. No one in the jury even flinched. The defendant, Daniel Riggs, sat shackled and silent, eyes fixed ahead. No lawyer beside him. No family in sight. Just that cold metal chain scraping against the wood. People saw what they wanted. A bitter, broken ex-Marine, and I'll admit for a second, so did I. Then the courtroom door creaked open. It was nothing special, but in the silence, it rang like a warning bell. A 4-star general walked in, crisp uniform, face set, not looking left or right. The room froze. Even the judge stopped mid-sentence. The jury half rose in disbelief. The general walked straight to Riggs. No hesitation, no words, just a silence that demanded respect. Riggs finally looked up, gave the slightest nod, like old soldiers do, and it was electric. No one dared breathe. The judge, rattled but holding her authority, asked, "General, may I ask your business?" Her voice barely steady. The general replied, calm as stone, "I'm here for the man before you. Gunnery Sergeant Daniel Riggs, United States Marine Corps, Task Force Iron Dagger." Then, in a voice stripped of pride or performance, he told a story. Years ago, near Fallujah, he was pinned down, ready to die, until shots rang out. 12. Enemies fell silently, and a sniper, Riggs, saved every last man. No medals, no glory, just the truth laid bare like a flag. I watched the prosecutor wilt under the weight of it, the jury visibly shifting. And then came the twist. Another man stepped forward, civilian clothes, soft-spoken, worn down. Matthew Dunley. He had been at the gas station the day Riggs was accused. Calmly, he said the kid was the one yelling, "Not Riggs." Riggs hadn't even moved. Matthew produced a written statement no one had cared to read, but the general wasn't finished. He submitted video footage, grainy but clear. The so-called victim was the aggressor, finger in Riggs' face, shouting, threatening. Riggs never flinched. The whole room shifted. You could feel it. The story everyone believed was crumbling. The judge watched the footage, expression unreadable, until slowly, recognition dawned. And just when it seemed like the moment had passed, came the kind of scene that burns into memory. The general stepped forward, stopped before Riggs, and slowly dropped to one knee. Not for show, not for drama, just to say, "I'm sorry. Sorry for Fallujah. For the years of silence. For a country that forgot how to listen." You could hear sniffles through the gallery. My fingers were numb from gripping the desk. Even the judge pressed a hand to her chest, trying to hold herself steady. Then Riggs stood, not with defiance, but like a man who finally remembered who he was. He placed a hand on the general's shoulder, not to lift him up, just to say, "It's okay, I see you too." And then, just for a moment, it happened. The smallest smile, not quite full, barely there at the corner of Daniel Riggs's lips, like a crack in all those long, quiet years of silent endurance. It wasn't joy. It wasn't triumph. It was a glimpse, faint, fleeting, of the man who had been buried under duty, pain, and time. A flicker of the human soul beneath the armor. When the judge finally found her voice, it was softer than it had been all day, trembling slightly, as though even she was feeling the weight of what had just unfolded. "In light of new evidence," she said, her eyes fixed on Riggs, "all charges are dismissed, and on behalf of this bench, I offer a formal apology." No one clapped. There was no applause, no cheers. It wasn't that kind of moment. Instead, the bailiff stepped forward and unlocked the chain around Riggs's waist. When it hit the courtroom floor, it rang out with a deep, echoing sound that felt less like metal and more like freedom, like a bell marking the end of a long battle. As Riggs turned to leave, something extraordinary happened. Every single juror stood up, not because they were told to, not because of procedure, but out of something deeper. Respect. Out in the hallway, on the courthouse steps, a quiet army waited. Dozens of veterans, men and women in old boots and weathered uniforms, with faces that had seen more than their share of sorrow, stood shoulder to shoulder. And when Riggs stepped outside, they all lifted their hands in salute. No shouting, no words, just the solemn, unwavering power of honor. For the first time in what may have been decades, he wasn't alone. The general fell in beside him. Then Matthew, and then more veterans, one by one, quietly joining until there was a line, a formation, not for war this time, but for recognition. I stood there watching them walk, feeling something in my chest twist, tighten, and I realized then I had been wrong. This was never about a threat, never about a courtroom battle. It was about finally seeing someone who had been invisible for far too long. I looked around and saw reporters stunned into silence, the prosecutor shaking his head like he couldn't reconcile what he'd just witnessed, and the judge still gripping the bench as if it were the only thing holding her together. And me? I wasn't just a clerk anymore, not just a bystander. I was a witness to something sacred, something almost holy, something this country so often forgets to make room for. Because sometimes justice isn't a verdict read aloud in a courtroom. Sometimes justice is a moment of clarity, a breath of truth, a room quiet enough to finally hear. It's the strength to admit, we were wrong, and now we see you. Sometimes a man doesn't need a lawyer, just the truth and enough silence to let it speak. So maybe that day, for once, the system worked. Or maybe we just got lucky. Maybe justice isn't always about punishment. Maybe it's about understanding the weight some people carry so the rest of us can live lighter, freer. Riggs didn't wave, didn't speak. He just gave a simple nod to the crowd, to the judge, to all of us, and walked on, the general and his brothers and sisters in arms at his side. You could say that was the end of it. But it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of something much harder to face, a question that lingers. How many more Daniels are out there? Silent, unseen, carrying stories we never think to ask about. And now, I turn to you. Was justice served that day? Or did we stumble into redemption by accident? Did the system work, or was it held up by a single man's courage and a few pieces of long-buried evidence? Where do we draw the line between threat and misunderstanding, between silence and dignity? I want to know. Drop your thoughts below, because stories like these, stories that reveal something true and aching about who we are, they only matter if we talk about them. And maybe, just maybe, in the talking, we begin to heal.